life is full of questions.
What's living if you never pull your shorts down and slide on the ice?
So teen TV, or tween TV, has always been kinda weird. It's not for adults, and it's not for kids. In the early 2000s, it was so much less than that. I bet they didn't even realize that teenagers had issues that were even worth addressing, because you're kind of at that immature age where you're defying your parents and you don't necessarily know what you want to be, so logic isn't really in your favor. And teens had weird problems like relationships, family struggles, identity issues. For some time, people didn't relate to it or think it even mattered. But that's when Nickelodeon came in and decided it did. And maybe even I believed that too, going into high school from middle school. Like, everything I was going through felt so trivial, it felt like it didn't matter, and that we were just being told that one day we're gonna grow up and get over all of our issues. And I accepted that. What I didn't realize was how much TV meant to me. I tuned into Nickelodeon and Disney to watch TV just to get my mind off of my daily life. I watched Hannah Montana go through all of her identity issues. I watched Drake and Josh struggle to accept one another. I was finally starting to see things in my life that I was actually in control of that I never even considered to this point. And that's when I realized the importance of tween TV. What's up, everybody? It's Johnny2000. And today we're talking about tween TV, how it came about, and then how it left pretty quickly. When I was in middle school, I just assumed that these tween shows had been going on since the beginning of time. There was always an iCarly, there was always a Hannah Montana, but I never realized that really before the 2000s, none of these existed. You either had adult sitcoms or you had kids' TV shows. Nobody was really trying to appeal to the middle demographic, but the ones who did, the outliers in the industry that were like, I'm gonna work on Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, and try to make shows that relate to the teen demographic, those were the game changers. Because not only did they set up really good scenarios for episodes, really iconic TV shows, but they shaped our minds without the rest of the world even realizing it. The timeline of tween shows is so much shorter than I ever realized. Not only did it start in the early 2000s, but it ended in the 2010s. With tween TV that you and I both know really well, our definitions of what it is, almost completely disintegrating. And we've always wondered why TV isn't the same, and it's always for reasons you wouldn't expect. I was able to identify this start and end with the top tween TV shows of each year. So we're gonna go through and we're gonna kind of talk about what we were watching, what was the most popular, and how it left. There's a lot to uncover with just the titles of these shows alone, so let's dive into it. So these rankings are a mix of TV ratings, cultural impact, online engagement, pulling from sources like Nielsen ratings, which were the traditional TV viewership numbers that actually all television thrived of in the early 2000s, some of the cable and streaming dominance, platforms like Netflix, Disney Plus, and HBO Max, Google Trends and social media impact, award recognition and network priorities, because we were the ones who decided at the time. And there's a lot to uncover. So in the year 2000, we had 5 pivotal shows. There was Boy Meets World from ABC, Dawson's Creek from the WB, Buffy the Vampire Slayer from the WB, Seventh Heaven from the WB, and Even Stevens from Disney Channel. So as you could tell, Boy Meets World was one of the first pioneers of this new teen TV show era, where the main character was a teenager. And it was pretty iconic, going on for so long and being about situations teens would go through that other people wouldn't consider an issue. Being so early in this development, it was before anything was censored, before we thought it was necessary to hide certain topics, and we found the middle ground between a pandering show and a funny one. With most of the shows being on WB, it looks like Dawson's Creek, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Seventh Heaven were just straightforward dramas. That must have been what we were watching at the time, which is a weird reflection. Even Stevens was the beginning of dipping into this new teen-like era. And while all that, Kenan and Kel and a bunch of stuff that was being developed by Nickelodeon, it didn't quite hit yet. It didn't find its audience. because it seems like everybody was into these dramas. None of these shows even had a laugh track except for Boy Meets World. That's when we transitioned to 2001, where the most important shows were still Boy Meets World. Dawson's Creek and Buffy the Vampire were still there, but then we added Lizzie McGuire from Disney Channel and Smallville from the WB. So we still have some more drama going on, but it seems like Lizzie McGuire broke into one of the more popular shows, with tween sitcoms becoming a little bit more censored and a little more family friendly. Like Boy Meets World was the epitome of going over all the dark topics, while Even Stevens and Lizzie McGuire were this new generation of focusing on being funny and not diving too deep into the dark realities of being a teen. It seemed to work at the time. The addition of Smallville showed that it was still a time where teens would rather watch adult scenarios. They were choosing it a little bit more over some of the Disney Channel Nickelodeon series. 2002 is when it continued, but Lizzie McGuire and Even Stevens became even more prominent, showing that there was definitely a need for some of these TV shows. That people were starting to watch family comedies about the teen generation. With the introduction of That's So Raven in 2002, everything started to change. 2002 is also the prominence of Degrassi, The Next Generation. I'm not sure if you guys saw this, but it was the controversial themes that Boy Meets World and all the WB shows were trying to tackle. But instead of focusing on more external issues like being a superhero or a vampire slayer, they started to focus only on teen issues like breakups and stuff. And I guess this is when people were like, oh, people actually care about this stuff. They don't need it to be some crazy, wacky TV show. In 2003, we had That's So Raven, Smallville, Degrassi, with more popular shows coming in like The OC and One Tree Hill. So dramas were taking over once again in this era. It wasn't until 2004 that we really see the iconic shows coming to life, taking over all the WB, ABC, and other series. 2004 was prominently featuring That's So Raven, The OC, Degrassi again, One Tree Hill, and this time, Drake and Josh. Drake and Josh was one of the first of the Dan Schneider shows that actually started to appeal to tween TV. Everything before it was kind of like still finding its footing and wasn't really making any of the ratings that the networks needed to justify making more tween shows. Like, if I were the networks, I'd be like, yeah, obviously we're just gonna make One Tree Hill, we're just gonna make another Boy Meets World. But Drake and Josh definitely changed the game. In 2005...
Are you ready?
2005 was the beginning of all the tween television we know today, with the most popular shows being That's So Raven, Drake and Josh, and now Zoey 101 taking over. Suddenly the only two that were competing with these shows were The OC and Degrassi The Next Generation. Do you see how it all kind of faded out from ABC, the WB, to slowly becoming more Nick and Disney Channel? Yeah, this is only the beginning, because in 2006, Hannah Montana entered the zeitgeist, and Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. And at this point, there was no turning back. Nickelodeon needed Disney Channel to take on more teen shows, and Disney Channel was riding off of Nickelodeon's success, so together, they kind of lifted this entire medium to be its own genre of tween television, where we're not necessarily talking about super dramatic, intense situations, but normal, everyday teen relatable problems. 2006 featured Hannah Montana, Drake and Josh, Zoey 101, Degrassi, and The Sweet Life. And this trend continued into 2007 with Hannah Montana, Zoey 101, Degrassi, The Sweet Life again. These shows were doing so well that they were the top performers each year. With 2007 having Gossip Girl and Degrassi still a part of their zeitgeist, this was like an untapped market. In 2008, it took another turn, adding iCarly to the mix. Hannah Montana, iCarly, Degrassi, like these were the shows that really nailed the format. In 2009, the streak continued when we added Wizards of Waverly Place, and even 2010 continued this legacy with Hannah Montana still going on, iCarly still going on, Glee being added, The Vampire Diaries from the CW becoming prominent, and then Degrassi still making it work, but this time they're on TeenNick, so it was very clear that they're committed to this teen issues. 2011 is when Victorious was added to the mix. 2012 was Shake It Up, with Victorious still being a major part. And suddenly Austin and Ally, Sam and Kat came in. Remember, we're talking about all the #1 shows, not necessarily just the random shows. Like, I know we didn't talk about Ned's Declassified or any of the other small ones, but these were the ones that, like, completely shifted the generation. Girl Meets World came in 2014, and I think as us teenagers got older, it seemed like Tween TV followed us. Like, Teen TV didn't adjust to the younger generations and allow them to get into the series as much as it was shifting with us. That's why Pretty Little Liars, Teen Wolf, The Vampire Diaries all joined. I mean, they had Girl Meets World in 2014, but that wasn't really for us anymore. It was probably one of the only attempts to reach the younger kids, and not a lot of people were watching it. Girl Meets World compared to That's So Raven or iCarly or Hannah Montana, it's very clear that this tween segment was starting to get abandoned. You could really tell as we hit 2015 and 2016, when the most relevant shows featured none of Disney and Nickelodeon. The most popular shows were Pretty Little Liars, Riverdale, Stranger Things, and 13 Reasons Why. These were what tween television was. Isn't that shocking? So while we went off to high school and college, so did tween television. We just assumed it went on in the background for the younger kids to watch, but none of them were really watching. It's almost like it wasn't tween TV. It's almost like it was Gen Z TV. And as you could recall, were you watching Disney or Nick 2015, 2016? No, because that's when Netflix was added. And then who was filling up that family gap? I mean, I'm sure there was a lot of shows, but none of them became popular. None of them entered the amount of fandom or ratings that these shows prior had done. Between 2017 and 2020, you can tell there was a lot of really good attempts at recreating that magic. In 2017, they had Andi Mack on Disney Channel. 2019, they had High School Musical, the series, On My Block. But really, and even Euphoria were taking teens' eyes. I consider 2018 to be the absolute death of all we knew teen television to be, as it was the first year with neither Nickelodeon or Disney Channel having a popular show, and that is a big deal. I wonder all the time, like, when I'm talking about my 2000s content, where does it start and where does it end? And while I have trouble defining it for Johnny 2000 as a brand, it's scary to see that tween television did have a beginning and an ending. I firmly believe it was 2002 to 2018. 16 years, ironically the age of a tween. With media shifting more to 13 Reasons Why, Stranger Things, and more adult-related teen content, it's clear that the generations just don't want family-friendly tween shows anymore. Or do they? I firmly believe there's a reason that we're seeing a resurgence in Hannah Montana, iCarly, and all these things, because there is a giant gap in tween television where nobody thinks that it's relevant anymore. Prior to the Boy Meets World era, before Dawson's Creek, Buffy, and even Stevens, we're at that place again where history is repeating itself and people are thinking tween television doesn't matter. I'm not saying this to scare you guys, but I do think it's relevant to talk about why we're not talking about this stuff anymore. As we keep diving into these videos, including cartoons, teen sitcoms, I think it's really important to keep shining lights on why this specific generation of storytelling is obsolete. I know a lot of this is kind of boring history type stuff for you guys, but for me, it's scary. You sometimes never realize the shift in our culture until it actually is laid out right in front of you. But I don't want to discount your guys' experience between TV shows. Like, tell me what your guys' defining shows were. Like, was it Ned's Declassified? Was it all that? And how did you notice your taste change? Thank you guys so much for watching. I had a great time diving into this deep topic with you guys, and I would love to know more about your thoughts. Keep in mind, I have new videos coming out every day, so stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.